All right, take two. Welcome to Critical Weight Theory, where sometimes I do a deep dive into the stories behind some of the most iconic albums of all time. And today I'm exploring Love, the Beatles' groundbreaking remix album released on November 20, 2006. So this is not just another greatest hits collection, it's a bold, reimagined take on the legendary band's music. So let's jump into the story behind Love and why it remains a fascinating listen for Beatles fans, old and new. So I would be lying if I said I was the greatest Beatles fan ever or something like that. But over the years, I've definitely come to appreciate them more than I did in my younger days. Back then I was more of a musical rebel. I was looking for stuff that was further underground. And obviously, the Beatles were not the most underground band one could think of. In fact, I even kind of rejected Jimi Hendrix and even Black Sabbath at the time because I thought they were too mainstream or whatever. But I've come to appreciate the Beatles for what they provide, and I think this album is an interesting dynamic in the band's history. So the concept behind Love, so what exactly is love? Well, imagine experiencing the Beatles' entire musical lifespan in a single condensed experience. This album takes classic Beatles songs and reinvents them through mashups, remixes, and reworkings of the original recordings. It's a fresh way to experience their music, almost like a dreamlike journey through their career. It's a bit of a sound collage sort of thing, really. That's kind of what a mashup is, but when you say collage, it makes it sound a little bit more artsy, doesn't it? Interestingly, Love was created as the soundtrack for the Cirque du Soleil show of the same name, which debuted in 2006 at the Mirage in not Los Angeles, Las Vegas. I was apparently just thinking of LA there, but it was in Las Vegas. This collaboration between Cirque du Soleil and the Beatles was an ambitious artistic fusion, bringing a new dimension to their music through some stunning visuals and performance art. So, yeah, that's a really interesting collaboration. So here's how the album came to be. The idea for Love came from a collaboration between the Beatles' legendary producer George Martin and his son. They were given unprecedented access to the Beatles' multi track master tapes, allowing them to experiment in ways never before possible. Interestingly, the project had its roots in a conversation between Cirque du Soleil and George Harrison, who was enthusiastic about the partnership before his passing in 2001. Harrison saw the potential in merging the Beatles' music with the creativity of the show, and his vision played a crucial role in making the project into a reality. So the music, it's unique. It features 26 tracks, blending over 130 elements from various Beatles songs into a seamless listening experience. Some standout moments include the track Because, which is an ethereal a cappella arrangement that showcases the song's harmonies like never before. There's a mashup of Within You Without You and Tomorrow Never Knows, creating a hypnotic psychedelic blend. Then there's Strawberry Fields Forever. This track combines multiple versions of the song to trace its evolution from demo to masterpiece. There's a medley of Drive My Car, The Word, and What You're Doing, seamlessly blending into an energetic, foot tapping groove. There's a brand new instrumental version of While My Guitar Gently Weeps, featuring a stunning string arrangement by George Martin, adding some emotional depth to the song that maybe it didn't have before. I don't know. You tell me whether you prefer this version or the original version. Obviously, it's not just a competition, but most people I think they would have preferences. I still think I would prefer the original version, but this version was still pretty good, and I could see why somebody would actually prefer the instrumental version, to be honest, as weird as that might sound. So, when Love was released, it was met with widespread acclaim. It actually wasn't trashed by that many critics, as far as I know. It seems like fans and critics alike praised its innovative approach to the Beatles' catalog and the way that it honored the original recordings while offering something fresh. And my take on that is if you want to hear the original tracks, you can still do that. You shouldn't step into something like this expecting it to be exactly the way the other songs were on the other albums, because this was sort of an experiment. So you really have to keep that in mind as you listen to it. There might be some tracks that you're not crazy about, but give the album a chance and you might find yourself pleasantly surprised. The album won 2 Grammy Awards in 2008 for Best Compilation Soundtrack Album for Motion Picture, Television, or Other Visual Media, and Best Surround Sound Album. So it was, a pretty well received album. And it is more than just a remix album. It's something that's a big complement to the Beatles' discography in a way. It introduces their music to new generations while giving longtime fans a fresh perspective. George Martin is often called the fifth Beatle, so you shouldn't just see this as some outsider stepping in to mess up their legacy or something like that. No, he was a respected figure in the Beatles universe and probably still is today. I don't think I've heard of any you know significant scandals about him, like completely mucking up the Beatles legacy, and I don't think this album does that either. And he was actually a bit of a genius, and here he was reinterpreting the Beatles' work in a way that felt both nostalgic and entirely new at the same time. So if you haven't yet experienced Love, I mean the album, not the phenomenon in general, but I highly recommend giving it a listen if you're a Beatles fan especially. Of course, most Beatles fans have probably listened to this, but I suspect there could be a few who sort of just shrugged it off and never gave it a shot because they didn't want to hear just a generic mashup album of their material. Maybe you thought it was disrespectful or something like that. But I'm saying if you get a chance, you might want to give this album a chance. And it's especially better in surround sound if you've got that. I don't have surround sound, so I'm a little bit cheated in that respect. But keep in mind that it did win a Grammy for that, so you might want to check out why. And if you do that, you can truly appreciate the depth of the mix better than a loser like me was able to do. And if you ever get a chance to see the Cirque du Soleil show in Las Vegas, if it's still going, I don't know, maybe it's not. But the visuals and storytelling are said to amplify the music in ways that make it unforgettable. So if you can experience that, I don't know if there are YouTube videos of it or if it's on DVD or Blu-ray or anything like that. But it does seem like it could be an interesting thing to experience. While the album doesn't include some well-known Beatles hits like Love Me Do, it does feature gems like I Want to Hold Your Hand and Nowhere Man. The beauty of Love lies in its ability to reintroduce us to the Beatles in a way that feels fresh and potentially inspiring and perhaps timeless. So that's all for today's episode. Thanks for joining me on this little analysis of the album Love. If you enjoyed this episode, despite my few little vocal flubs here and there, be sure to subscribe, click a like button if you see one, even leave a review or a comment if you can in the YouTube video or wherever you can leave a review or make a comment. And of course, share it with your fellow Beatles fans. And until next time, keep exploring great music.